Chapter 4740, Don't stoop to the level of birds. Lan Luofang's expression suddenly turned a little ugly. Lan Luofang, if you don't speak, no one will treat you as a mute. Lan Luofang smiled even more proudly. Lan Luofang, Zhu Keqing usually looks down on you the most. Moreover, you also know about the matter between Zhu Keqing and Nanny Su. Today, you will suffer. TSK, you actually got mixed up with this Yun Chuzhou. Indeed, birds of a feather flock together. Idiots should be together with trash. Lan Luofang was so angry that she was trembling. Lan Luofang, don't think that I won't dare to do anything to you in the ancestral residence. If you continue to spout nonsense, I won't hold back. If you have the ability, why don't you make a move? Not to mention that you don't dare to be impudent here. Even if you really dare to make a move, you are not my match. Aren't you just relying on your mother? Otherwise, you are nothing. Lan Luoyan said with some jealousy and hatred. Lan Luofang's mother, Jia Shi, had a strong personality. In addition, her mother's family's influence was not weak. Among the wives of the Lan family, she could definitely be considered as a valiant type. Therefore, even if Lan Luofang did not have any good intentions and her spiritual power was not high, others would not dare to do anything to her. They could only verbally humiliate her. Lan Luofang also cared about her face and would not tell these things to Jia Shi. As time passed, Lan Luoyan and the others became even more arrogant. Lan Luofang was angered by Lan Luofang until her eyes were red. However, she heard Yun Chuzhou beside her laugh lightly. Sister Luofang, why are you arguing with a little chick? She is so ugly and she still has the cheek to call her Luofang. Shameless. Lan Luofang saw Lan Luofang's light yellow clothes and really looked like a little chick. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. Lan Luoyan glared fiercely at Yun Chuzhou. You trash actually dared to scold me. You're courting death. So what if I scold you? You're ugly to begin with, and you're not allowed to let others say it. It's not your fault that you're ugly, but it's your fault that you came out to scare people. I don't know where you got the courage to call yourself Luofang, but it's true. You're so ugly that Dian fell to the ground because she was scared by you. Isn't that Luofang? Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. You. Lan Luoyan was so angry that she was about to speak, but Yun Chuzhou interrupted her. What do you mean you? You're just a little chick, what right do you have to criticize me and Sister Luofang? Get lost. Sister Luofang, let's not stoop to the level of birds. Where are our seats? Yun Chuzhou held on to Lan Luofang's arm and said with a smile. Lan Luofang saw that Lan Luofang was so angry that she was about to explode. She instantly felt that this Yun Chuzhou was not without merit, so she did not shake off her arm. She pointed to a corner and said, let's sit there. Lan Luoyan could only sit down hatefully. She thought to herself, Zhu Keqing and that Zhen Mama were usually unclear. Lan Luofang, that bastard, killed Zhen Mama. She would suffer. Yun Chuzhou sat on the chair and squinted her eyes as she looked around. Hong Ling had told her that unless it was a young master who was out training or carrying out a family mission, he would have to come to the training hall for lessons. He Xinzhou discovered that the moment Zhu Keqing came in, all the young masters were sitting upright with proper attitudes. This fellow could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Not to mention other things, the Lan family's old ancestors still had a way with this aspect. Chapter 4741 Illusion. Zhu Keqing was an old man with gray hair. He did not look good. Yun Chuzhou cursed in her heart. No wonder he took a fancy to Zhen Mama. It was a perfect match. Zhu Keqing's eyes were a little red and swollen. His face was also very haggard. After entering, his malicious gaze looked at Lan Luofang and Yun Chuzhou in the corner. Lan Luofang could not help but shiver. Usually, this Zhu Keqing did not like her. Now that she had killed Zhen Mama, this class would probably be very difficult to endure. Zhu Keqing walked to the round platform at the front and said with a somewhat hoarse voice, "In the last class, I gave you a task. Now, I will check it. If there are any unfinished tasks, then you can only accept the punishment." When Lan Luofang heard this, her face turned pale and her body started to tremble. When Yun Chuzhou saw her like this, she knew what was going on without even thinking. She curled her lips in her heart. These people of the Lan family had been taught to be sheep. If it was her, Humph, a guest retainer wanted to punish her, he wouldn't die. Just as Yun Chuzhou was thinking, she heard Zhu Keqing say, "Lan Luoyan, come to the front and show us." Yun Chuzhou was stunned. Oh, he didn't ask Lan Luofang but asked Lan Luoyan? Lan Luoyan didn't look nervous. She walked to the front and formed a seal with her hands. Then, she released her fire spiritual power. In an instant, the fire spiritual power turned into a dancing fire butterfly. It was very beautiful. Yun Chuzhou looked at the fire butterfly and remembered what she saw in the book collection pavilion yesterday. It was strange to say that the cultivation methods of the heavy cloud continent and the towering sky continent were different, but they were similar to the immortal origin continent. The people here didn't pay much attention to weapons, but rather, they paid attention to the control and change of spiritual power. To put it bluntly, there wasn't any essential difference from the spiritual power phantom art that Yun Chuzhou had learned in the immortal origin continent. However, the people of the heavy cloud continent could more freely change their spiritual power. Not only could they change their spiritual beasts, but they could also change other spiritual beasts or even spiritual insects to assist in battle. As for the grade and number of spiritual beasts, that would depend on one's comprehension and ability. Although the fire butterfly that Lan Luoyan had transformed into was not very good at attacking, its appearance was very lifelike. For her current level, it was already considered pretty good. As expected, Zhu Keqing nodded his head to express his satisfaction and let her return to her seat. Zhu Keqing then called out for Lan Luoshan to come forward. Lan Luoshan walked to the front with impeccable bearing. Her hands formed a seal and water spiritual power gushed out, instantly transforming into an arrow fish. It was very agile. This time, Zhu Keqing was even more satisfied. He nodded and let Lan Luoshan return to her seat. Every time the roll call was made, Lan Luofang's heart was in her throat. When she found out that it was not her, she was slightly relieved, but the next time, she was worried again. Yun Chuzhou pursed her lips. This guest elder Zhu Keqing definitely did this on purpose, just to torture Lan Luofang. How despicable. At first, Yun Chuzhou's attention was still on Lan Luofang, but very quickly, she was attracted by the spirit power illusion that everyone was displaying. This fellow cursed in her heart, other people could transform into butterflies and swordfish, but she seemed to only be able to transform into small purple needles and dehua. In the past, she could even release a group of little piglets with spirit power, but in the end, she could only release a dehua. Chapter 47-42, Shameless Old Thing. Just as He Xinjiu was cursing in her heart, she heard Zhu Keqing say, "Lan Luofang, come forward and show me." Lan Luofang shivered, but she could only brace herself and walk to the front. She released her water spiritual power, and after a long while, a fish head appeared. The fish body behind her could not appear no matter what. She withdrew her spiritual power dejectedly, knowing that she would inevitably be punished. Sure enough, Zhu Keqing sneered again and again. "Lan Luofang, what exactly are you learning every day? It's been so long, and you can't even materialize a fish. You're absolutely stupid. With your talent, you're only a student of the Lan family. Otherwise, you're not even qualified to be a concubine." The more Zhu Keqing spoke, the uglier his words became. Lan Luofang's face was flushed red, her eyes were bloodshot, and her body was trembling non-stop. Clearly, she was extremely indignant. Some of the young masters of the Lan family on the seats were gloating, some were indifferent, but none of them showed any sympathy. Yun Chuzhou pursed her lips. This Lan family was really heartless, a bunch of scum. She suddenly stood up, picked up the chair beside her and threw it at Zhu Keqing. Shut the fuck up. Can you scold my sister Luofang too? Shameless old thing. Zhu Keqing clearly did not expect Yun Chuzhou to come this way. Although he avoided the chair, he was still a little embarrassed. Lan Luofang looked in disbelief at Yun Chuzhou, who slowly walked to the front. Her nose was sore and she started to cry. Zhu Keqing stared at Yun Chuzhou coldly. He naturally knew that the culprit yesterday was this wretched girl. He did not expect that before he could deal with her, she had already delivered herself to his doorstep. Impudent. Yun Chuzhou, you actually dared to beat me. Are you trying to rebel? Men, escort the two of them to the punishment hall. Zhu Keqing said viciously. There were many guards outside the training hall, who were specially there to maintain order in the classroom. This was also one of the reasons why the young masters of the Lan family were very obedient. When the guards heard Zhu Keqing's words, they rushed into the training hall. Just as they were about to go forward, they heard Yun Chuzhou say faintly, "If anyone is not afraid of death, then come here. It just so happens that my quota for killing people today is not used yet." Lan Luoyan could not help but curl her lips and say, "A quota for killing? Are you crazy?" Yun Chuzhou did not even look at her and coldly snorted, "The old ancestor gave me 3 quotas for killing people a day. As long as there are no more than 3 people, he will not punish me. If you don't believe me, then come and try." When the guards heard this, they could not help but take a few steps back. Although they were skeptical, this person beat up Xiang Yuan yesterday and killed Jing Mama. Moreover, housekeeper Su was respectful to her. Could it really be true? Zhu Keqing gritted his teeth in anger. Don't listen to her nonsense. Arrest her. Zhu Keqing saw that the guards did not listen to his orders. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead popped. He reached out to grab Yun Chuzhou. He thought very simply that as long as he controlled Yun Chuzhou, she could only obediently go to the Hall of Punishment to receive punishment. Unfortunately, Yun Chuzhou was so smart, how could she let him have his way? This guy took out a bag of chili dough and threw it at Zhu Keqing. Zhu Keqing subconsciously slapped it. He was really unlucky. Although he later realized that he had set up the spiritual energy shield, he was still choked to the point that tears flowed down his face. He was in a sorry state. Chapter 47-43 damaged a chair. Not only Zhu Keqing, other than Lan Luofang, who was dragged to the side by Yun Chuzhou, even the guards were choking and coughing. The guards cursed in their hearts. This cousin lady is too fucking mean. Who brings chili noodles to class? Is she here for class or to cook? Lan Luofang was even more confused. At the same time, she was very worried. In the ancestral residence, the guest elder's status was quite high. Lan Lusang's elder brother, Lan Luohan, had once offended a guest elder and was severely punished by the Hall of Punishment. She had to lie in bed for 3 months before she could get out of bed. Not only had Yun Chuzhou smashed her chair, but she had also thrown a bag of chili noodles. This punishment would definitely not be light. Although she looked down on Yun Chuzhou, after all, Yun Chuzhou was standing up for her. She was more or less grateful. At this moment, there was a crash. Yun Chuzhou poured a bucket of cold water on Zhu Keqing's head and said shamelessly, "Zhu Keqing, let me help you flush it. Otherwise, your eyesight is not good to begin with, and it would be bad if you really became blind." Zhu Keqing instantly became a drowned rat, as embarrassed as he could be. Zhu Keqing was about to go mad. "Bitch, you are courting death." While cursing, Zhu Keqing released his spiritual power to Yun Chuzhou. His spiritual power instantly turned into a wolf and pounced on He Xinzhou with its bloody mouth wide open. Yun Chuzhou quickly jumped behind the guards and shouted, "This Zhu Keqing is crazy. He wants to kill me. Help me take him down." The guards were frustrated. Even if they didn't want to take Zhu Keqing down, they had to deal with the wolf that had turned into spiritual essence to protect themselves. Yun Chuzhou took the opportunity to signal Lan Luofang with her eyes. She meant to run away. Lan Luofang gritted her teeth. She knew that if Yun Chuzhou ran away, Zhu Keqing would definitely vent his anger on her. Therefore, she ran out of the training hall as well. However, where could she run to? Take me to the punishment hall, quickly. He Xinjiu urged. Lan Luofang was dumbfounded. Go to the punishment hall? Was she crazy? After making such a scene, she still took the initiative to go to the punishment hall. While Lan Luofang was still in a daze, Yun Chuzhou pinched her. It hurt so much that she cried out in shock, Yun Chuzhou, are you crazy? Lan Luofang had no other choice but to bring Yun Chuzhou to the Hall of Punishment. When Lan Luofang saw the words, Hall of Punishment, her body couldn't help but tremble. She really didn't understand what Yun Chuzhou was up to. Yun Chuzhou dragged Lan Luofang directly into the Hall of Punishment. Then, she said to a guard, call out the person who is in charge here. We are here to receive punishment. The guard was dumbfounded. He had been working in the Hall of Punishment for a long time, and this was the first time he saw someone take the initiative to receive punishment. However, after yesterday's incident, He Xinjia's reputation had spread throughout the ancestral residence. The guard did not dare to neglect her and immediately went in to deliver the letter. Soon, an old man walked out. Lan Luofang said to Yun Chuzhou in a low voice, this is Elder Ning of the Hall of Punishment. He is highly regarded by the old ancestor. Please don't court death. Elder Ning sized up the two of them and asked, are you here to receive punishment? What did you do wrong? Elder Ning, we damaged a chair in the Hall of Cultivation. We know that we were wrong, so we came to receive punishment. As the saying goes, leniency is given if you confess, and severity is given if you resist. We came here to surrender. Can we reduce the punishment? Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes and said. Chapter 47-44 She was not smart in the first place. Elder Ning frowned. A chair was damaged. This was not a big mistake. How could she take the initiative to receive punishment? Didn't they say that Yun Chuzhou was very naughty? Why was it different from what they had heard? Forget it. It's just a chair being damaged. Moreover, you guys can take the initiative to receive punishment. Let's forget about this matter. You guys can go back. Elder Ning said. Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, Elder Ning, you really have the heart of a bodhisattva. We will definitely not make the same mistake again in the future. We will take our leave now. Yun Chuzhou was just about to leave with the stiff-faced Lan Luofang when she heard someone behind her say in a flustered and exasperated manner, Elder Ning, these two bastards have disturbed the order of the classroom and even beat up the guest elder. They deserve to be severely punished. The person who spoke was none other than Zhu Keqing. The reason why he had only come over now was that no one had shown him the way. After he came out of the cultivation hall, Yun Chuzhou and Lan Luofang had long disappeared. Those maids and guards were afraid that Yun Chuzhou would take revenge on them, so no one dared to tell them where Yun Chuzhou went. Zhu Keqing could only search every courtyard. He never thought that Yun Chuzhou and Lan Luofang would come to the punishment hall, so he had to delay for a while before he found them. Zhu Keqing was in a terrible state now. His wet hair stuck to his scalp, and his originally red and swollen eyes were now swollen like a monkey's butt. It was simply too horrible to look at. Elder Ning was stunned for a moment, and then he asked, what exactly happened? Zhu Keqing said ferociously, this Yun Chuzhou not only threw a chair at me, but also threw a bag of chili noodles at me. She's simply lawless. Elder Ning, so this was how Yun Chuzhou said that she damaged a chair in the cultivation hall. Just as Elder Ning was in a daze, he heard Yun Chuzhou say pitifully, Zhu Keqing, you can't lie through your teeth. Let me ask you, did the chair hit you? It was only because I let go of the chair that it fell in front of you. It didn't hurt you at all. As for the chili noodles, you wanted to kill me. I did it to protect myself. Compared to your spirit beast, my chili noodles are already very merciful, okay? Moreover, you even called me a little slut. I'm a little slut. Then, won't the old ancestor become an old slut? You actually dared to scold the old ancestor. Aren't you going too far? Zhu Keqing was so angry that he was trembling. Nonsense. If you didn't hit me with the chair and resist the arrest of the guards, would I have made a move? Zhu Keqing, since you said so, then I really have to talk to you. It's fine if you scold my sister Luo Fang for being stupid, after all, she wasn't very smart in the first place. Lan Luo Fang, she doesn't want to lose face, right? But, you said that Sister Luo Fang isn't qualified to be anyone's concubine, and that she can't even be compared to the cauldron of the Cauldron Hall. Is this what people call her? A person like you doesn't have the qualifications to be a teacher. I was also in a moment of anger and accidentally broke a chair. You even released your spiritual beast to kill me. I even suspect that you're a spy sent by some sworn enemy of the Lan family. Clearly, you don't have good intentions. Yun Chuzhou said angrily. Zhu Keqing was so angry that he wanted to go up and strangle her to death. He explained, Elder Ning, don't listen to her nonsense. It's not like that at all. If you don't believe it, you can ask the other young masters of the Lan family who are present. Chapter 47-45 ran away. Zhu Keqing thought to himself that those young masters of the Lan family would definitely not speak up for that bitch Yun Chuzhou. At that time, he would be able to confirm her crime. Elder Ning looked at the people of the Lan family who followed closely behind and asked in a deep voice, between the two of them, which one of them is telling the truth? Lan Luoyan quickly said, Elder Ning, what Zhu Keqing said is absolutely true. Yun Chuzhou not only disturbed the order of the classroom, but also called Zhu Keqing a shameless old man. The few people who were close to Lan Luoyan also confirmed what Zhu Keqing said, and they were all gloating. They had never taken a fancy to this cousin who suddenly appeared. Moreover, what happened yesterday made them both jealous and hateful. How could Yun Chuzhou be summoned by their ancestor? She deserved to be punished. Elder Ning frowned and looked at Yun Chuzhou. What else do you have to say? Yun Chuzhou smiled as she took out a recording stone. After activating it, Zhu Keqing's harsh voice came from inside, with your talent, you're only a student of the Lan family. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be qualified to be a concubine. Zhu Keqing never would have dreamed that Yun Chuzhou would secretly record the voice. He immediately revealed a bit of panic. Although the Lan family respected the Keqing, it was still too much for him to say such things about the little master of the Lan family. The more Elder Ning listened, the uglier his expression became. He did not object to the guest elders being more strict towards the little masters of the Lan family. After all, this was the intention of the old ancestor. However, this Zhu Keqing insulting Lan Luofang like this was simply too arrogant. Elder Ning, you've heard everything. I'm not lying, right? Sigh, I'm a person who respects my teacher the most, so even if I'm very angry, I didn't do anything out of line. Elder Ning, you've always been the most fair. You can handle this matter as you see fit. I absolutely have no objections. Yun Chuzhou put away the recording stone and said respectfully. Lan Luofang pursed her lips in her heart. You're the only one who respects your teachers. You're the only one who hasn't done anything out of line. You're lying. Elder Ning glanced at Zhu Keqing coldly and said, Zhu Keqing, you don't have to teach classes for the time being. I'll make the arrangements after I understand the situation. Zhu Keqing glared at Yun Chuzhou with resentment and silently retreated to the side. Elder Ning looked at Lan Luoyan and the others again. You all publicly lied and will be punished according to the 10th rule of the ancestors' rules. Each person will be given 5 lashes. Go in and receive your punishment. Lan Luoyan and the others' faces instantly turned pale. They regretted what they had done. If they had known earlier, they would not have said anything. Elder Ning finally looked at Yun Chuzhou. Although there is a reason for this, you clearly have a better way to deal with it, but you are still making trouble. Elder Ning was about to say the punishment for Yun Chuzhou when he saw Yun Chuzhou bow and say, Thank you, Elder Ning, for not punishing me. I know I was wrong. I will be careful with my words and actions in the future. I will not cause trouble. Elder Ning, you're quite busy with your daily affairs. I won't bother you anymore. I'll take my leave now. He Xinjiu ran away after saying that. Seeing that, Lan Luofeng finally became smart and quickly ran away as well. Looking at Yun Chujia's disappearing figure, Elder Ning was so angry that his beard stood up. He wanted to get someone to catch her, but he decided to forget about it. According to this little girl's character, she would make mistakes in the future. At that time, she would be punished for several crimes. After Yun Chuzhou ran out for a distance, she tiptoed and saw that no guards were chasing after her. She then heaved a sigh of relief and said to Lan Luofeng with a smile, "Sister Luofeng, do you know where the ancestral residence's big kitchen is?" Chapter 47-46, Gowei Batsao. She said unhappily, "There will probably be a new guest giving us lessons. Why are you asking the kitchen? After all this, I'm hungry." "It's not too late to eat something before going to class," He Xinjiu said as she clutched her stomach. Lan Luofeng wished she could kill this guy in front of her with one slap. She had caused such a huge disaster, yet she still wanted to eat. What a good-for-nothing. "I have some snacks here. You can deal with one bite." Lan Luofeng took out a few pieces of pastry and handed them to He Xinjiu. Yun Chuzhou said while eating the pastry, "All right then. Let's go back to the cultivation hall. I hope the guest elders sent here are more sensible this time. I don't want to waste my energy to beat people up again." Lan Luofeng, when the two of them returned to the cultivation hall, except for Lan Luoyan and the others who were punished, the others had already returned to their seats. Seeing the two of them enter, the gazes of the crowd were somewhat complicated, especially when they looked at Yun Chuzhou with even more complicated gazes. Yun Chuzhou could not be bothered with them. She leisurely sat at the back and continued, eating snacks. Not long after, an old man with a serious expression walked in. Lan Lushan's eyes could not help but light up when she saw the old man. She was secretly delighted. This guest elder sure was the most inflexible person, and he hated people who did not follow the rules the most. Yun Chuzhou was going to be unlucky. As expected, when Mr. Shi saw He Xinjiu eating a pastry, he immediately frowned and shouted coldly, "You are not allowed to eat during class." Lan Luofeng, who was beside Yun Chuzhou, quickly snatched the pastry that Yun Chuzhou was eating. She was afraid that this fellow would cause trouble again. Yun Chuzhou took out a handkerchief to wipe her mouth and then laid lazily on the table. Mr. Shi glared at her, but did not say anything, and began his lecture. Although Mr. Shi's lecture was simple and profound, Yun Chuzhou knew that other than De Hua and the little purple needle, she could not conjure up anything else, so the more she listened, the more sleepy she became. Not long after, she lay on the table, and fell asleep. Lan Luofeng wanted to wake her up, but she was afraid that this fellow would cause some trouble, so she could only pretend that she did not see it. While guest elder Shi was talking non-stop, he saw He Xinjiu, who was sleeping soundly. His face immediately darkened. "Yun Chuzhou, come to the front. I want to see what level your spirit energy transformation skill is at." When guest elder Shi saw how carefree she was, he was immediately infuriated. He said with a slightly displeased tone, "Mr. Shi, what are you trying to do? Transform into the simplest spirit beast or spirit insect. Be careful not to transform into your intrinsic spirit beast." Yun Chuzhou smiled bitterly in her heart. Other than the small purple needle and De Hua, she did not know how to transform into anything else. Transform my ass. However, this fellow still released his purple spiritual power and began to conjure according to what Mr. Shi had told him. Unfortunately, he did not conjure anything. When Mr. Shi and the Lan family members saw Yun Chujia's purple spiritual power, they were all stunned. This Yun Chuzhou actually had a heavenly thunder spirit root? Didn't they say that the heavenly spirit root was not tolerated by the Tian Dao? How did this Yun Chuzhou survive until now? While everyone was stunned, they heard Yun Chuzhou mumbling, "Can you give me some face? Even if it turns into a Gowei Batsao, it would still be worth it to me, right?" Thus, under everyone's astonished gazes, Yun Chujia's purple spiritual power turned into a purple, huge Go Wei Batsao. Chapter 47-47, Undying Wood. Just as everyone was in a daze, they heard Yun Chuzhou say excitedly, "Did you guys see that? I transformed into a Go Wei Batsao. Ha, I'm really amazing. I actually transformed into a Go Wei Batsao. Ha ha ha." Everyone, was she an idiot? For the spiritual power transformation technique, the transformation of items and plants was the easiest. They could have completed it a long time ago. Even the most useless Lan Luofang could transform into a tree, not to mention this unremarkable Go Wei Batsao. They did not know that Yun Chuzhou had tried countless times to convert other than the small purple needle and Dehua, but she had never succeeded. This time, she was naturally very happy to be able to convert a Go Wei Batsao. This guy was very excited, but this guy looked at the converted Go Wei Batsao suspiciously. Huh? Why did this plant look so similar to Go Wei Ba? Although its appearance was completely different, the smug look on its face was clearly that glutton, Go Wei Ba. Guest Elder Shi snorted coldly. Why are you so excited about transforming into a plant? I asked you to transform into a spirit beast or a spirit insect, not a plant. Start over. Hey Xinjia's thoughts were interrupted by Guest Elder Shi's words, so she could only try again. Unfortunately, the transformed Go Wei Batsao was still the same. Everyone burst into laughter. It looked like this Yun Chuzhou only knew how to manifest the Go Wei Batsao. She was really trash. Mr. Shi's expression turned even uglier. Although your spirit root is different from an ordinary person's and your cultivation speed is faster than others, you can't be so unmotivated. If you are still unable to manifest the embryonic form of a spirit insect or spirit beast in the next lesson, you will be punished to chop down an undying tree. Everyone instantly showed a gloating expression. Yun Chuzhou was puzzled. What the hell was this immortal tree? After class, Yun Chuzhou asked Lan Luofang, "What the hell is an immortal tree?" There are many immortal trees in the garden of the ancestral residence. This kind of tree is different from ordinary spirit plants. Not only is it extremely hard, but after a sword cuts it, the cut will instantly regenerate. It takes tens of thousands of cuts to cut it down. Therefore, to successfully cut down an immortal tree, it will take at least a day and a night. Moreover, it will need to be continuously cut down. It is simply inhuman torture. Lan Luofang said with some sympathy. She felt that Yun Chuzhou would definitely not be able to transform into a spiritual insect or spiritual beast in the next class. She would definitely be punished. Yun Chuzhou nodded after hearing Lan Luofang's words, but she did not take it to heart. The biggest advantage of this guy was that he was big-hearted. Moreover, her mind was now focused on the newly transformed Go Wei Batsao. She was in a hurry to go back and find out what was going on. She and Lan Luofang had just walked out of the ancestral house when they saw Lan Luoyen, supported by two maids, staring at her with a ferocious expression. What does it have to do with me that you were punished for perjury? However, I'm never afraid of trouble. If you have the ability, fight me now. Come on, come and fight me. Hey Xinjiu said with a smile. Yun Chuzhou, bitch, just you wait. Well see. Lan Luoyen was so angry that she rolled her eyes. She had to be supported when she walked, how could she beat her? Well see. I'm not afraid of you even if you run. You little chicken. Lan Luoyen was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She did not care that she was still injured and directly released her spiritual beast, a goshawk. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips and raised her hand to release Dehua. She did not expect to release a Go Wei Batsao. Chapter 47-48. She was going to heaven, not to mention Lan Luoyen and the others. Even the spiritual power goshawk released by Lan Luoyen was dumbfounded. What the hell is this thing? Yun Chuzhou was also dumbfounded. She clearly wanted to release Dehua. Why did she release this Go Wei Batsao? The huge purple Go Wei Batsao instantly attracted the attention of many people. Lan Luoshan and the others did not go far, so they also gathered around, ready to watch Yun Chuzhou make a fool of herself. Lan Luoyan ignored the pain in her body and laughed arrogantly. Yun Chujiu, your natal spiritual beast is actually a Goeibatsao. Ha ha ha, this is hilarious. I'll give you one chance. You kneel down and admit your mistake to me right now, and I'll take back my spiritual eagle, or else you'll die a horrible death. Although Yun Chuji's heart was like a muttering dog, she had a disdainful expression on her face. What's wrong with Goeibatsao? Take care of your little chicken as usual. Lan Luoyan was instantly enraged from embarrassment. She directed her spiritual energy goshawk to attack Goeibatsao. Right at this moment, a loud shout was heard. Stop! Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw Lan Dimeo walking over with a dark expression. Why was Lan Dimeo here? Was there a need to ask? Of course, it was because he had learned that Yun Chujiu had caused trouble again. He had just finished cultivating when Zhu Keqing reported with a conflicted expression, Third Elder, the young miss beat up Zhu Keqing. Lan Dimeo felt his head buzzing. Ever since Yun Chujiu came to the Lan family, there was not a day that she did not cause trouble. Moreover, the trouble she caused was getting bigger and bigger. She actually dared to beat up a guest. She was going to heaven. However, he could not help but be stunned when he heard the end of the report. That troublemaker actually did not get punished for beating up Zhu Keqing. When he heard what Zhu Keqing said, his expression immediately darkened. He felt that Yun Chujiu beat him up well. No matter what, Lan Luoyan was still the daughter of the third branch. How could a mere guest like him say such outrageous things? If he didn't beat her up, would he still be alive? Even so, he still felt that it was necessary to beat Yun Chujiu up to prevent her from causing trouble again. After waiting for a long time, Yun Chujiu still did not return. Only then did he bring Zhu Yang to the ancestral residence. No matter how much he disliked Yun Chujiu, he would not watch helplessly as Yun Chujiu was bullied by the people of the main branch. That was why he spoke out to stop her. When Lan Luoyan saw Lan Dimeo, she had no choice but to reluctantly put away the spirit beast. On the heavy cloud continent, the master could freely put away the spirit beast. This was also the reason why the spirit power illusion technique on the heavy cloud continent was superior to that on the immortal origin continent. After Lan Luoyan bowed to Lan Dimeo, she directly left without complaining. Because the big house and the third house were in a competitive relationship, it was useless to talk about it. After returning to the third house, Yun Chujiu was called to the study room by Lan Dimeo. Great uncle, thank you for helping me out. I know that great uncle dotes on me the most. Hei Xinjiu said with a smile. Lan Dimeo glanced at her, then, he said, you'd better restrain yourself a little so that you won't regret it later. Great uncle has taught me that I will be obedient in the future and never cause trouble, Yun Chujiu said obediently. Lan Dimeo snorted coldly. Apparently, he didn't quite believe what she said, but he didn't know what to say. He could only wave his hand impatiently and chase her out of the study. Chapter 47-49, Jia Shi Yun Chujiu walked out of Lan Dimeo's courtyard. When she saw Lan Luofang's maid, Zihua, looking from afar, she knew that she was waiting for her. As expected, when she saw Yun Chujiu coming out, Zihua quickly ran over. Miss, my lady invites you over. Yun Chujiu nodded. Yesterday's sweet and sour pork ribs were not bad. Remember to go to the big kitchen and get more. Zihua, what did she mean? Was this person planning to freeload again? Was she addicted to freeloading? However, she did not dare to have any objections. This ancestor even dared to slaughter Zheng Mama and even beat up Zhu Keqing. Unless she was tired of living, she would only provoke her. Zihua looked at Hong Ling sympathetically. It must be difficult to live with such a murderous devil, right? Hong Ling looked at Zihua's eyes with a complicated expression. Was it hard to live? It seemed not bad. At least when she slapped Xiang Yuan with her own hands, she felt better than ever. When Yun Chujiu arrived at Lan Luofang's courtyard, Lan Luofang snorted coldly. Don't think that I'll treat you differently just because you stood up for me today. Consider it as I owe you a favor. I'll return it to you in the future. Oh. Lan Luofang looked suspiciously at He Xinjiu, who was eating her own fruit. What did she mean by "oh"? She had thought that Yun Chuzhou would return the favor and not let it go. It was just an "oh" and it was over. Yun Chuzhou took 2 bites of the fruit and said to Zihua, "Zihua, what are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get someone to get the food. Are you trying to starve me and your miss to death? Remember my sweet and sour pork ribs." Zihua's eyes twitched as she looked at Lan Luofang. Lan Luofang glared at Yun Chuzhou. Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat all day long. If you can't summon a spirit beast to assist you in the next spiritual class, you'll be punished. Yun Chuzhou glanced at her. You speak as if you can successfully summon a spirit beast. It's the same. Let's not laugh at each other anymore. Lan Luofang was so angry that she was twitching. She remembered that she had never been able to successfully transform into a spiritual beast. She was a little depressed and could not be bothered to ridicule Yun Chuzhou anymore. After the food was served, Lan Luofang was not in the mood to eat. Yun Chuzhou, on the other hand, was eating happily. While eating, she said, "What's there to be worried about? Anyway, I'm the one who's at the bottom. What are you afraid of?" Lan Luofang thought about it and agreed. In the past, she had always been the last in her spiritual power class. Now, no matter what, she had become the second last, which was an improvement. She saw that more than half of the dishes on the table had been eaten by Yun Chuzhou, so she quickly picked up her chopsticks and started eating. While the 2 of them were enjoying their meal, a maid's voice came from the door, "The second madam has arrived." Before Lan Luofang and Yun Chuzhou could react, the second madam, Jia Shi, had already rushed in. "Fang quickly let mother take a look. Are you hurt anywhere?" Jia Shi pulled Lan Luofang up and down to check. The day before yesterday, Jia Shi returned to her mother's house. Although she heard that Lan Luofang was fine in the end, she still rushed back. "Mother, I'm fine." Lan Luofang saw Yun Chuzhou's teasing gaze and could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. Jia Shi saw that Lan Luofang was really fine and poked Lan Luofang's forehead with her finger. "Are you stupid? How did I give birth to such a stupid girl like you? Aren't you often bullied by others? Why didn't you tell me?" Chapter 4750 Having a mother's child is like a piece of treasure. Jia Shi was obviously really angry, causing Lan Luofang to step back repeatedly. Lan Luofang felt wronged and her eyes instantly turned red. "Mother, the people of the ancestral residence are not to be trifled with. I'm afraid that you will be at a disadvantage." Jia Shi's anger instantly turned into heartache. She hugged Lan Luofang's heart and cried non-stop. Yun Chuzhou watched from the side. Her heart was sour. Having a mother's child was still better. Sure enough, a mother's child was like a piece of treasure, while a child without a mother was like a blade of grass. No matter how stupid Lan Luofang was, at least she still had Jia Shi to protect her. However, her mother was trapped in the Zen sect and had never even met her. Therefore, this fellow turned his grief and anger into appetite and began to gnaw on the fruit viciously. Only then did Jia Shi notice Yun Chuzhou and said with a smile, "Little girl Jiu, it's all thanks to you this time. What do you want? Second aunt will agree to it." Yun Chuzhou did not think that the smiling Jia Shi was a kind person. She did not forget that the maid she killed previously was one of Jia Shi's people. She smiled and said, "Second aunt, you are too polite. Sister Luofang is my biological cousin. I naturally want to help her. There's no need to thank her." Jia Shi's eyes flashed. She smiled and said, "You little girl, you really know how to talk. I brought back a lot of delicious and fun things from my mother's house. I'll get someone to send them to you later." "Thank you, second aunt. It's getting late, I'll go back now." Yun Chuzhou threw the fruit core into the plate and tactfully said goodbye. Jia Shi saw that Yun Chuzhou had left with Hong Ling, so she asked Lan Luofang, "Tell me what happened in the past 2 days." Lan Luofang immediately told her everything that had happened in the past 2 days, and then she said with some awkwardness, "Mother, that Yun Chuzhou did frame me yesterday, but if it wasn't for her help today, I would have been punished, so, Jia Shi had a look of disappointment. "You want me to stop finding trouble with her, don't you? How did I give birth to such a soft-hearted girl like you?" "Sigh, it's fine if your father and I are still alive, but if we go, what will you do?" Lan Luofang immediately hugged Jia Shi's waist and said, "Mother, don't talk nonsense. You and father will definitely be able to accompany Fang Er." Jia Shi sighed. Birth, old age, illness, and death are inevitable. With your character, unless you can find a husband who will protect you, otherwise, sigh. When Lan Luofang heard Jia Shi mention the marriage, her face immediately turned red. "Mother, what are you talking about? I'm still young. Besides, I don't want to get married. I want to always accompany you and father. I don't care. I don't want to get married anyway. Besides, Yun Chuzhou came from the low-level continents. Didn't she not get married?" At the mention of Yun Chuzhou, Jia Shi snorted coldly. "That little girl is obviously full of bad ideas. Be more careful in the future. Don't let her sell you and help her count the money." Lan Luofang acknowledged, but in her heart, she felt that following that wicked and smoking Yun Chuzhou was actually not bad. At least in the past, when she was reprimanded by Zhu Keqing, no one would stand up for her. Jia Shi naturally saw through Lan Luofang's thoughts and frowned without saying anything. Since Fang Er felt that Yun Chuzhou was not bad, then she would take another look. To be honest, if Fang Er had as many ideas as that little girl, then she would not be so worried. Chapter 47:51 was indeed Go Weiba on the other side. The wicked and smoking He Xinzhou strolled back to her own courtyard. This fellow had always been thinking about De Hua. Even though when he first summoned De Hua, this fellow was very resistant to the fact that his spiritual beast was a pig. But after such a long time, he had at least developed feelings for De Hua. He couldn't just disappear like that, could he? Besides, De Hua was also pretty awesome. It was better than a single Guai Chao, right? Speaking of Guai Chao, He Xinzhou immediately looked at the strange grass in her dantian. When the Guai Chao noticed her spiritual sense, it immediately began to act cute with a sly look on its face. Yun Chuzhou frowned and asked with her spiritual sense, "Does that Guai Chao have anything to do with you?" The leaves of the Guai Chao immediately began to sway proudly. It was extremely proud. When Yun Chuzhou saw this situation, she was so angry that she gritted her teeth. As she said, that Goei Batsao was very similar to the Guai Chao. So it was really related to it. Could it be that De Hua's disappearance was also caused by this fellow? Yun Chuzhou gritted her teeth and asked, "Where's De Hua? Was he harmed by you?" Guai Chao looked wronged. Although it could not speak, its emotions were clearly expressed and had nothing to do with it. Yun Chuzhou narrowed her eyes and released her spiritual beast again, wanting to release De Hua. However, every time she released De Hua, it was the purple Go Wei Ba Cao. Especially when the flower tassel that looked like Go Wei Ba tail was still wagging proudly, He Xinzhou was so angry that she kept twitching. Yun Chuzhou really could not understand why things had turned out like this. She recalled that back in the ghost realm, she muttered a sentence about a big brick, and in the end, she summoned a big brick. Could it be that this time, it was also because of her muttering? Just as Yun Chuzhou was puzzled, but Face said, "Little fairy, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. Maybe De Hua has gone into hibernation, and when it wakes up, it will become even more powerful." Although Yun Chuzhou was skeptical, she couldn't think of a reason. She could only temporarily put the matter of De Hua to the back of her mind. Then, there was the problem. No matter what, De Hua was still very powerful after she turned into a black form. Now that she had turned into a Go Wei Ba Cao, could it be that she was going to use the Go Wei Ba Cao to fight against the spiritual beasts in the next battle? Just thinking about that scene made her feel sour. If it were vines or poisonous plants, it would be all right. What could a Goei Butsao do? The more Hei Xinjiu thought about it, the more sour she felt. This damned Goei Butsao. What sin had she committed in her previous life that caused her to be entangled by this damned Goei Butsao in this life? This fellow thought of the mission that Mr. Shi had given her and tried it again and again. Unfortunately, other than the purple needles and Goei Butsao, nothing else materialized. In the end, she gave up. At worst, she could just chop the undying wood. Another day passed, and it was time for class again. Fortunately, this class was a body refining class and not Mr. Shi's spiritual power class. Hei Xinjiu could be considered to have let out a sigh of relief for the time being. The location of the class was not in the cultivation hall, but in a small square. In the heavy cloud continent, not only did they pay attention to a cultivator's spiritual power cultivation, but they also paid attention to the toughness of the body. Furthermore, there was a special body refining method. Yun Chuzhou listened to the contents of guest Jis lecture and thought to herself, this heavy cloud continent was indeed worthy of being a high-level continent. Their knowledge was indeed better than those low-level continents. Chapter 4752, Skipping Rope. Hei Xinjiu. After guest Ji finished his explanation, he opened a barrier and allowed everyone to train inside. Yun Chuzhou did not know what was going on inside, so she followed Lan Luofang and the others into the barrier curiously. After entering the barrier, Yun Chuzhou realized that there were many stone caves inside. There were plaques hanging on them, such as the Ice Room, the Fire Room, the Thorn Room. Lan Luofang saw Yun Chuzhou's blank expression and explained, choose 3 rooms randomly and stay in each room for 15 minutes. Then you can leave. Yun Chuzhou nodded. This was probably a good way to train the Bodhi's endurance. The reason why everyone chose 3 rooms was because of their spiritual roots. For example, fire's spiritual roots were naturally more resistant to heat. If they chose only 1 fire room, it would be meaningless. Lan Luofang had a water spiritual root and was most afraid of fire. However, she entered the fire room first. Yun Chuzhou's eyes flashed with a faint light. This little fool still had some merits. As this fellow thought, he followed her into the fire room. The fire room was boiling with heat. The moment one entered, one would feel as if they were being burnt. Hei Xinjiu had the fire-repelling pearl on her, but this fellow did not activate the fire-repelling pearl in order to train his body. Even so, the fire-repelling beads could not kill her even if she was struck by lightning, so the heat was not a problem. Therefore, the people in the fire room were stunned to see that there was not even a drop of sweat on Hei Xinjiu's face. She even took out a rope and began to jump. As she jumped, she said, "It's too cold. I have to exercise, or I will be frozen stiff." Everyone was so angry that their noses were almost crooked. However, when they thought about the fact that this guy had a heavenly thunder spirit root, they understood that this guy was deliberately provoking them. Compared to Yun Chuzhou's show-off, Lan Luofang was not as relaxed. Her face was roasted until it was red, and her forehead was full of bean-sized beads of sweat. She felt as if her internal organs were being burned. Even so, she still bit her lips and persevered. Finally, after a quarter of an hour that felt like a lifetime, Lan Luofang staggered out of the fire room. Yun Chuzhou followed behind her and said faintly, "Since you're so impatient with the heat, why did you have to choose the fire room?" Lan Luofang didn't say anything, but turned around and entered the ice room next to her. As soon as this guy entered, he shivered. The temperature of the ice room was frighteningly low. What dripping water into ice was simply too weak. In this ice room, even if he circulated his spiritual power, his teeth would tremble from the cold. Although there was a small flame in his right palm, he knew that he had to become stronger, so he did not rely on the small flame. Instead, he continued to jump rope in the room. Everyone in the room looked speechlessly at Hei Xinjiu, who was jumping around like a rabbit. Every time they entered, they would obediently endure the cold. There was actually such an operation. Even though Yun Chuzhou kept jumping rope, she still felt a bone-piercing chill. She inexplicably thought of Di Baiming. She did not know what kind of trouble he had encountered. Just as Yun Chuzhou was thinking, Lan Luofang said with a trembling voice, "Let's go, it's 15 minutes." Yun Chuzhou followed Lan Luofang out of the ice room and entered the deep sea room next to it. Most of the people in the Lan family had water spiritual roots, so there were many people in the deep sea room. The content of the deep sea room was very simple. It was to survive for 15 minutes under the turbulent sea without the help of external forces. Chapter 47:53 Wanted to trick her. Although this deep-sea chamber was difficult for water-type spiritual roots, it was still barely achievable. However, it was too difficult for other spiritual roots. Therefore, everyone looked at Yun Chuzhou as if they were watching a good show. Only then did Lan Luofang realize that Yun Chuzhou did not have water-type spiritual roots. She used her eyes to signal for her to leave quickly so that she would not be in danger. Yun Chuzhou waved her hand indifferently. She had a water-repellent bead. What was there to be afraid of? However, this fellow did not activate the water-repellent bead at the beginning. He wanted to see how long he could withstand it. Very soon, this fellow's face turned red and his eyes were about to pop out. Lan Luofang was about to forcefully push her out, but she realized that this fellow had suddenly returned to normal. She was puzzled. Could it be that she had a water-repellent bead or water-repellent bead on her? Although water-repellent pearls were rare, the Lan family still had a few of them. However, they were rare and even Lan Luofang did not have them. Therefore, Lan Luofang and the others all felt that Yun Chuzhou had activated the water-repellent pearls. 15 minutes later, everyone left the deep-sea room. Lan Luofang said with some exhaustion, "You borrowed external force just now, so this deep-sea room doesn't count. You can only choose another room. You can't stay here for long. I'll go out first." Yun Chuzhou also knew that she had cheated just now, so she glanced around and finally chose a wind blade room. At this time, the members of the Lan family had basically completed their mission and left one after another. Only Yun Chuzhou was left here. As soon as Yun Chuzhou entered the wind blade room, several wind blades swept toward her. This guy originally wanted to use spiritual power to hit her, but he remembered the rules here and had to dodge. At first, it was still relatively easy, but as more and more wind blades appeared, it was obviously impossible to dodge just by relying on his movement technique. Yun Chuzhou could not help but squint her eyes. Could it be that she had been tricked? As she used her spiritual power to hit the wind blades, she moved towards the exit. However, after she pressed the mechanism on the wall, the stone door did not open. Hei Xinjiu curled the corner of her mouth. She had really been tricked. She just did not know who had tampered with her and wanted to kill her just like that. She was too naive. After retreating for a distance, this fellow took out a pile of talismans and threw them at the stone door. Although these talismans could only be considered low to medium grade in the heavy cloud continent, they could not withstand the large number of them. After the huge explosion, not to mention the stone door, even the entire wind blade room started to tremble. There were even broken stones falling from the ceiling of the cave. The Lan family members outside only felt the earth tremble. Everyone was shocked. What was going on? Could it be that the earth dragon had turned over? At this moment, Lan Luofang's expression changed. Guest Ji, Yun Chuzhou is still below. Guest Ji was stunned. He glanced around and indeed did not find any trace of Yun Chuzhou. However, the situation down there was still unclear, so he naturally would not rashly go down. At this moment, housekeeper Su rushed over with many guards. Guest Ji, what happened? Guest Ji quickly said, there should be something wrong with the body refining room down there. Yun Chuzhou is still down there. It's just that the situation is still unclear, so it's not good to rashly go down and check. Housekeeper Zu's face stiffened when he heard that. Yun Chuzhou again. But he couldn't ignore it. Just as he was about to ask the guards to go down and save her, he saw Yun Chujo slowly walk out. As she walked, she patted the dust off her body. Chapter 4754 Deposit, TSK. Isn't this wind blade room a little too weak? Why is it collapsing for no reason? Fortunately, I'm smart. Otherwise, I would have been buried inside. Hei Shinjo said with a look of lingering fear. Guest Ji frowned. You said that the wind blade room collapsed. I don't know if it will collapse in the end. Anyway, there are stones falling from the roof. It really scared me to death. Hei Shinjo looked like she was scared to death. Guest Ji frowned even more. He had gone down to check yesterday and did not find anything unusual. Why would it suddenly collapse? He tilted his ears to listen. He felt that there should be no danger, so he brought a few guards down. Seeing the situation in front of him, Guest Ji almost vomited blood. This was not a collapse. It was clearly someone who blew up the stone door. As for the culprit, there was no need to guess at all. It must be that Yun Chujo. Guest Ji angrily returned to the top and said to Hei Shinjo, who was chewing on the spirit fruit to calm herself down, angrily, Yun Chujo, did you blow up the stone door of the wind blade room? Everyone immediately burst into a clamor. What? So it was this Yun Chujo who had blown up the door of the wind blade room that caused such a huge commotion? She was courting death. She actually dared to blow up the wind blade room. Was she tired of living? Housekeeper Su was even more dumbfounded. He had finally realized that once Yun Chujo came to the ancestral residence, she would definitely cause trouble. Moreover, each time she came, it would become more serious. Was she going against the ancestral residence? Yun Chujo calmly threw the fruit core that she had finished chewing to Lan Luofang and said, I don't want to blow up the door either. Those talismans are very expensive. But someone has done something to it. I can't open the stone door and come out. I can't just wait for death inside, right? If you don't believe me, you can check if someone has done something to it. Today, I'll put my words here. No matter who wants to trick me, don't let me find out. Otherwise, I'll definitely let them know how to write the word regret. Yun Chujo did not ask housekeeper Su or guest Ji to help her make a decision, because it was useless even if she said it. The Lan family did not prohibit this kind of scheming, and even encouraged it. It could only be said that whoever fell for it was unlucky. Unless someone really died, no one would care. Housekeeper Su saw that Yun Chujo was eager to give it a try, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This Miss Cousin really had the blood of the Lan family flowing in her. For this kind of scheming, it was really pleasant to see. Guest Jis' attitude towards Yun Chujo finally eased up a little. Housekeeper Su coughed twice and said, Young lady, even if there's a reason for this, you can't just let it go just because you damaged the wind blade room. Are you going to compensate with money or go to the Hall of Punishment to receive your punishment? Yun Chujo curled her lips. In my place, anything that can be solved with money is not a problem. Just name a number. But, if it's too expensive, can you pay in installments? Housekeeper Su looked at her speechlessly and then said, We won't know how many spirit stones it will cost until it's repaired, but it will at least cost 2 million high-grade spirit stones. Yun Chujo nodded. In that case, I will pay a part of the deposit first. After the repair is done, I will hand over the remaining money. Housekeeper Su nodded, feeling that Yun Chujo's attitude was not bad. However, when he saw that Yun Chujo only threw him one upper-grade spirit stone, his nose almost went crooked from anger. One spirit stone could be called a part of the deposit. Was she joking with him? He wanted to say something, but when he saw Yun Chujo's faint smile, he immediately backed down. He would talk about it after the repairs were done, or else, if she were to come up with something bad again, he would not be able to stand it. Chapter 4755, A fruit core. Housekeeper Su weighed the pros and cons, and finally said with a stiff face, Miss Cousin, that's all for now. When the wind blade room is finished, this old servant will ask you for the remaining penalty. Yun Chujo nodded. No problem. I am a person of the utmost integrity, and I have always treated money like dirt. I will definitely not go back on my word. For some reason, housekeeper Sue had a bad feeling. There was an 80% chance that he wouldn't be able to get the money. Housekeeper Sue gave a wry smile and looked at Guest G. Guest G, please continue with your lesson. Leave the matters of the wind blade room to me. Guest G nodded. He was clearly not too surprised that someone had tampered with the wind blade room. Similar things happened all the time in the Lan family. It was just a matter of who had the better methods. Guest G brought everyone back to the training hall and helped them answer some of the questions they had about body tempering before he dismissed the class. Lan Luofang slapped a fruit core on Yun Chujia's table. Yun Chujo, why did you throw the fruit core to me just now? Yun Chujo blinked her eyes. If she said that it was just a casual throw, would she get beaten up? Sister Luofang, I want to tell you that you are like this fruit core now. Although it looks dull, you can take root and sprout with time. So don't lose your confidence. I have high hopes for you. Lan Luofang didn't know that this guy was just making things up. She was stunned and looked at the fruit core on the table in a daze. Seeing her like this, Yun Chujo felt a rare pain in her conscience. She coughed and said, Sister Luofang, it's the middle of the afternoon. Let's go to the ancestral residence's big kitchen for a walk. Lan Luofang put the fruit core into her storage ring and said, the dishes made in the ancestral residence's big kitchen are not very delicious. We might as well go back to the third room to eat. Yun Chujo blinked her eyes and said, it doesn't make sense. Shouldn't the food given to the ancestor be delicious? Lan Luofang looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot and said, the ancestor doesn't care about the desire of the mouth and stomach. He even often abstains from eating. Moreover, even if he wants to eat something, the ancestor has a small kitchen. How could he eat the food from the big kitchen? Yun Chujia's eyes lit up. Then the food in the small kitchen must be very delicious. Of course, but the small kitchen is not open to us. We can only taste the cooking skills of the small kitchen during some festivals or when we offer sacrifices to our ancestors every year, Lan Luofang said. Hei Xinjiu swallowed her saliva. She wanted to go to the ancestor's place for a free meal, but she was afraid of stirring up a hornet's nest, so she could only follow Lan Luofang back to the third room sullenly. When Lan Dimeo heard that Yun Chujo had blown up the stone door of the wind blade room, he was so shocked that he almost sat on the ground. He had said that this troublemaker would not stop. As expected, the more trouble she caused, the bigger it got. He did not know what kind of trouble she would cause next. Yun Chujo was also very curious. However, she did not have any manpower or evidence, so she could only put this matter aside for the time being. However, she became even more vigilant in her heart. Another day had passed, and the spiritual energy lesson that gave Yun Chujo a headache had arrived. As soon as guest Elder Shi entered the cultivation hall, he said to Hei Xinjiu, who was dressed in a quail outfit, Mr. Shi, come forward. Yun Chujo, come forward. I want to see the results of your training over the past few days. Chapter 47-56, Purple-masked man Yun Chujo braced herself and walked to the front, gesturing for a long time. Unfortunately, every time she released the Gowei Batsao, it was always showing off. Guest Elder Shi snorted coldly. I've already heard from others that this Gowei Batsao is your natal spirit beast. In that case, you don't know how to transform into a supplementary spirit beast at all, do you? Yun Chujo laughed dryly. I think so. Mr. Shi was so angry. What did he mean by, I think so? Since you haven't completed your mission, then go and cut down an undying tree after class. Otherwise, don't attend the next spirit power class. Mr. Shi said in a deep voice. Mr. Shi, everything has to be done step by step. My spirit power is already much lower than everyone else, and I've just attended another class. Aren't you asking too much of me? Hei Shinjo said in a wronged tone. Mr. Shi was taken aback. It made sense when he thought about it. This Yun Chujo was from a lower-tier continent, and she was only at the 6th level of the Nirvana stage. She had only attended one class, so it was indeed a bit harsh for her to immediately transform into a supporting spirit beast. What you said does make sense. Then I'll give you a few more days. If you still can't transform into a supporting spirit beast in 10 days, you won't have anything to say, right? Mr. Shi, you're really too reasonable. It's my honor to meet a teacher like you. Don't worry, I'll definitely study hard and practice hard when I go back. Although Hei Xinjia's words were beautiful, she was cursing in her heart. Forget 10 days, even 10 years would be useless. She could just drag it out one day at a time. Seeing her sincere attitude, Mr. Shi waved his hand and let her return to her seat. Everyone watched as Yun Chujo hopped back to her seat, and their hearts felt as though they had lost their minds. Didn't they say that Mr. Shi was the most inflexible? Why was she not punished after a few words from Yun Chujo? However, everyone thought about it. Based on Yun Chujo's level of trash, she might not even succeed in 10 months, let alone 10 days. She would be punished sooner or later. Mr. Shi did not continue with his questions and began his lecture. Lan Luofang, who was on tenterhooks, finally heaved a sigh of relief. Up until now, she had only been able to transform into a fish head. If she was questioned, she would definitely be punished. At the same time, the atmosphere in the Lan family's ancestors' study was somewhat tense. A man wearing a purple mask said in a slightly displeased voice, Lan family head, are you not planning to hand Yun Chujo over to our divine demon hall? The patriarch of the Lan family smiled, today is different from the past. Since Yun Chujo is a junior of our Lan family, as the patriarch of the Lan family, I naturally can't hand her over to you. The face of the Lan family's patriarch darkened slightly. I treat you as a guest and treat you with courtesy. If you are so presumptuous, then please go back. The purple-masked man gritted his teeth and softened his tone. Master of the Lan family, I was too impatient, so my tone was not good. You also know the importance of Yun Chujo to our divine devil hall. If you can hand over Yun Chujo, we are willing to help your Lan family eliminate the dissidents and make you the #1 aristocratic family that can contend with the Zen sect. Seeing that the purple-masked man lowered his body, the Lan family's ancestors' tone also became more polite. This is an important matter. Let me think about it and I will reply to you in a few days. How about it? Although the purple-masked man was not satisfied, he did not say anything and turned around to leave. Chapter 47-57, Being punished. The old ancestor of the Lan family clapped his hands and a masked man walked out. Master, the reason why you didn't give Yun Chujo to him is because of young Master Luo Chen. The old ancestor of the Lan family smiled. It's not entirely because of him breaking through the love tribulation. Don't you think that ever since that little girl came to the ancestral residence has become much more interesting? The corner of the man's mouth twitched a few times. Master, are you trying to protect Yun Chujo? He did not think that the cold-hearted master would protect Yun Chujo just because of her temperamental personality. There must be other reasons behind this. The old ancestor of the Lan family said lightly, since this little girl is very important to the Divine Devil Hall and we hold her in our hands, she is a useful bargaining chip. How can we give her to the Divine Devil Hall so easily? Besides, the Divine Devil Hall is very secretive. They said that they would help us become the #1 aristocratic family to contend with the Zen sect. I'm afraid that they are trying to kill us by using us as an excuse. I'm not old enough to be fooled by them. Master is wise. What about Yun Chujo? Let her jump around first. There's no need to interfere. She won't be able to jump out of my hands anyway. Yes. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Hei Shinjo was once again called to the front by Mr. Shi. This fellow had been fiddling around for a long time, but all he could do was transform into Goei Batsao. Mr. Shi was both angry and angry. What else do you have to say? Nothing else. I'll go chop wood after class, Hei Xinjiu said dejectedly. Mr. Shi snorted coldly. After letting her return to her seat, he said, Lan Luofang, come forward. Lan Luofang braced herself and went to the front. With a whimper, she transformed into a fish head. Although it looked a little better than before, it was still far from what guest Elder Shi had requested. In the end, she was also punished by Mr. Shi to chop the undying wood. After class, Lan Luoyan and a few people who were on good terms with her started to mock and ridicule Yun Chuzhou and Lan Luofang. TSK, the two of you are really like each other. A pair of trash. You are so trash. I reckon that you will be punished in the future. The immortal wood in the garden was prepared for you, ha ha ha. Lan Luofang was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wanted to fight with Lan Luoyan, but she was afraid that the others would help, so she could only glare at Lan Luofang. Yun Chuzhou, who was at the side, said slowly, Sister Luofang, don't listen to the dog barking here. Let's go. Lan Luofang was so angry that she scolded, who are you calling a dog barking? Yun Chuzhou, are you courting death? If Third Elder didn't help you out last time, I would have let you know how powerful you are. Yun Chuzhou didn't even look at her and dragged Lan Luofang out of the training hall. Lan Luoyan was so angry that she was twitching. She was originally mocking the two of them, but why did she end up so angry? It was all because of that bitch Yun Chuzhou. Lan Luomei said from the side, Sister Luoyan, in half a month's time, the family competition will be held. That Yun Chuzhi's natal spiritual beast is only a Gowei Batsao. When the time comes, you just have to teach her a lesson. Lan Luoyan's eyes flashed with malice. Although the family competition did not allow people to be killed, it was hard to avoid a momentary mistake. When the time came, she would take the opportunity to kill that bitch. In her eyes, Yun Chuzhou was no match for her. Not to mention the huge difference in spiritual power, her spiritual beast was still a Gowei Batsao. It was simply trash. Chapter 4758, Giant Fish. After Yun Chuzhou and Lan Luofang left the cultivation hall, they rushed to the garden of the ancestral residence. Lan Luofang was very depressed. It was not that she did not work hard, nor was it that she did not work hard, but she just could not successfully transform. She felt that all of this was too unfair. When she saw Yun Chuzhou, who was eating fruits as she walked, she suddenly felt angry. Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat for one day. Aren't you sad at all? Yun Chuzhou glanced at her. Sad? What's there to be sad about? I couldn't create a spirit beast in the first place. It's not that I didn't work hard. Besides, no one said that if you can't create a spirit beast, you have to die. What's the big deal? Lan Luofang was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she found that Yun Chuzhou had already walked some distance away. She quickly chased after her and said, but, if you can't transform into a supporting spiritual beast, you will be at a disadvantage in the battle. Are you really not worried? Yun Chuzhou casually threw the fruit core in her hand and said slowly, let me ask you, if a tiger and a group of chickens fight, who will win? Lan Luofang said unhappily, is there a need to ask? Of course it's a tiger. No matter how many chickens there are, they are still not a match for a tiger. So, you just have to make your natal spiritual beast more powerful and become a tiger-like existence. Why are you afraid of other people's little chicks? Besides, why do you have to transform into a swordfish? Since you have the experience of transforming into a fish head, why don't you just transform into a giant fish? Lan Luofang stared blankly at Yun Chuzhou, who was smiling brightly. She felt that Hun Dun's thoughts had become clear in an instant. She almost subconsciously released her water spirit energy and instantly transformed into a giant fish. Although it was not that agile, it was much stronger than before. Lan Luofang looked at the giant fish that she had transformed into. She calculated with her nose and tears flowed down. Finally, she squatted on the ground and started sobbing. Yun Chujo looked speechlessly at the crying Lan Luofang. Other than helping Lan Luofang with the intention to rope in Jia Shi, more importantly, she found Lan Luofang more pleasing to the eye. That's right, this fellow liked to train and teach this kind of prideful little girl, and he kept a respectful distance from Lan Luoshan, that kind of white lotus. After a while, Lan Luofang stood up with red eyes and said somewhat awkwardly, "Just take it that I owe you one more time. Since you're so cunning, why can't you transform into a supplementary spiritual beast?" Yun Chujo shrugged. "Doctors can't cure themselves. There's nothing I can do about it. Besides, my Gowei Batsao is also very, very powerful." The two of them chatted as they walked. Soon, they arrived at the garden of the ancestral residence. Although it was called a garden, in fact, most of the plants in the garden could be used as medicine. The reason why He Xinzhou knew this was very simple. Guai Chao, this foodie, was acting cute again. After He Xinzhou suppressed the Guai Chao, she followed Lan Luofang to the northeast corner of the garden. There was a small piece of immortal wood growing there. Unlike what Yun Chujo had imagined, the immortal wood was not very thick. Moreover, it did not look strange on the outside. Could it really not be cut? The guard guarding the immortal wood handed over 2 axes, indicating that the two of them could cut the tree. The guard's duty was to supervise the people chopping down the undying wood. After they completed their task, he would hand them the corresponding certificates for examination by Mr. Shi. Chapter 4759 really needed to use her brain. Yun Chujo shamelessly picked the thinnest immortal wood, picked up the axe, and chopped at the tree trunk. Although she used all her strength, she only left a hole less than half an inch deep in the tree trunk, and the hole quickly recovered as if it had never been cut. Lan Luofang, who was watching from the side, said with a bitter smile, "Did you see it? This immortal wood is so strange. I guess we'll have to chop it until this time tomorrow to cut off an immortal wood. This thing is so magical. If it's made into a weapon, wouldn't it be very powerful?" Yun Chujia's eyes sparkled as she said. Although the immortal wood is not afraid of being cut by knives, it's extremely afraid of fire. Therefore, it's very useless and doesn't have much use, Lan Luofang explained. Yun Chujo was immediately discouraged when she heard that. She thought that this thing was very valuable, but it turned out that it was only used to torture people. An hour later, Yun Chujo saw that the trunk of the undying tree was still unharmed, and she was instantly discouraged. She threw the axe on the ground and said to Lan Luofang, "I won't cut it anymore. You can cut it yourself." Lan Luofang wiped the sweat from her forehead. "If you don't cut the undying tree down, Mr. Shi won't let you take the spiritual power class." Yun Chujo rolled her eyes. Actually, she could try using the large kitchen knife, but the guard beside her had been staring at her, so she didn't have the chance to make a move. Besides, she didn't want to expose the magic of the big kitchen knife. What if someone was after her? Then, how could she cut down this damn immortal tree effortlessly? This guy held his chin and pondered. The reason why this immortal tree was immortal was because of its fast recovery ability. In that case, if there was a way to prevent it from recovering, wouldn't that be enough? This guy stood up and walked in front of Lan Luofang. He nibbled on a fruit and watched her cut the tree. Lan Luofang was angry. "It was fine if you didn't cut it yourself, but you still came to watch the show. You really owe me." However, she was very grateful to Yun Chujo now, so she endured it and didn't say anything. She continued to cut the tree. Yun Chujo noticed that there was a small amount of liquid seeping out from the cut that Lan Luofang had cut. This was probably the secret to the immortal tree's rapid recovery. Yun Chujo looked around and grabbed a handful of soil. After Lan Luofang had finished cutting, she quickly sprinkled it on the cut of the tree trunk. Lan Luofang couldn't take it anymore. "Yun Chujo, what are you doing? It's fine if you don't cut yourself, but why are you here to cause trouble for me?" This guy clapped his hands happily. Indeed, people still needed to rely on their brains. She would not be stupid enough to chop it for an entire day and night. Sister Luofang, look. After I sprinkled the soil on the broken part of the immortal wood, the healing speed of the immortal wood has slowed down a lot. This means that as long as the sap secreted by the immortal wood is cut off, we can easily cut it off, Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. Lan Luofang looked in the direction that Yun Chuzhou was pointing at and was surprised to find that Yun Chuzhou was right. The healing speed of the undying wood had indeed slowed down a lot. She felt that her brain was not enough. She did not know how many people had been punished to cut down this undying wood. Didn't everyone just obediently cut down the tree? Perhaps only Yun Chuzhou would think of this. Lan Luofang took a moment to calm down and said, even if you are right, how can it help? We can't just cut down and throw dirt into it, right? At the beginning, it was fine, but as the fracture went deeper, the dirt probably could not be thrown in. Chapter 4760 was indeed full of bad ideas. Yun Chuzhou looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot. Sister Luofang, is that your head on your neck? It can't be a lump of wood, right? Who said that you have to sprinkle the soil? The reason why I sprinkled the soil is to prove that as long as the sap is blocked, it can slow down the healing speed of the immortal wood. Can't you just cut and pour water into it at the same time? Anyway, you have a water spiritual root, so you can easily make water. Although Lan Luofang was annoyed by this fellow, her heart was moved. Yes, using water could completely dilute or flush out the sap secreted by the immortal wood. Perhaps this was really feasible. Thus, as Lan Luofang cut, she used water to wash away the cut. She was pleasantly surprised to find that the healing speed of the immortal wood had indeed slowed down a lot. Even the naked eye could not see any signs of healing. She continued to work hard and chopped more than a dozen times. The immortal wood broke with a sound. Lan Luofang rubbed her eyes. She could not believe it. How could it break so easily? Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, come over and help me water it. Lan Luofang naturally did not have any objections. She immediately went over to help and continuously poured water on the broken part that Yun Chuzhou had cut. A moment later, Yun Chuzhou's immortal wood also broke. Yun Chuzhou threw the axe in front of the guard. Our mission is complete. Give us the proof. The guard was dumbfounded. He had supervised many people cutting the immortal wood, but this was definitely the first time they had done it so easily. However, they did not conform to the rules. The other party had indeed used the axe to cut it, and there was no rule against sprinkling water. Therefore, he could only take out 2 wooden tokens that represented the completion of the mission and give them to the 2 of them. Yun Chuzhou put away the wooden tokens and hummed a tune as she left the garden with Lan Luofang. Of course, during this period, Guai Chao once again clamored to eat the spiritual plants in the garden. However, He Xinjiu mercilessly suppressed it. What a joke! If she were to pick the herbs in this garden, she would definitely be taken to the punishment hall. Elder Ning would definitely still remember what happened last time. She did not want to court death. Yun Chuzhou saw that it was still early, so she dragged Lan Luofang to the library. She didn't expect to meet Lan Luoyan and the others at the entrance of the library. You 2 trash actually dare not chop the undying wood? Do you plan to not have any spiritual power lessons in the future? But that's true. It doesn't matter if trash like you don't have lessons. You won't be able to learn anyway. Lan Luofang wanted to defend herself, but she was dragged into the library by Yun Chuzhou. Why are you dragging me? Why didn't you tell them that we've already chopped the immortal wood? Lan Luofang asked in confusion. Are you stupid? Why did you say so much to her? When class starts, she'll jump up and down and scold us. Then, well, take out the wooden token. When that time comes, her expression will definitely be very interesting. How fun would that be? Yun Chuzhou laughed like a wolf with a big tail. Lan Luofang, no wonder her mother always said that this little trash was full of bad ideas. She was indeed too evil. Yun Chuzhou took out the recliner and placed it on the ground. Then, She started to read happily. The books on the first floor of the library were not rare books. Basically, they were all basic cultivation techniques and some basic knowledge about the Chongshao continent. Yun Chujo picked up a book and started reading it. It recorded some strange things and treated it as a notebook. When she saw one of the records, Yun Chujo suddenly sat up straight. Chapter 4761. Could she be the descendant of a mermaid? Lan Luofang saw Yun Chujia's abnormal behavior and came over. She saw the jade slip in Yun Chujia's hand that had this paragraph written on it. It's rumored that the ancestors of the Lan family in the Chongshao continent once married a mermaid, so most of the descendants of the Lan family have water spiritual roots and are quite talented. Lan Luofang pursed her lips. You really believe it? This is simply nonsense. If we really have mermaid blood in our bodies, why would we still live on land? We would have long gone to the sea. Besides, mermaids are also demonic beasts. How could humans and demons get married? These people are just jealous of our Lan family's talent and made it up. Yun Chujo smiled. What you said makes sense. Looks like you're not that stupid after all. Lan Luofang snorted coldly and ignored her. She continued to read her book. Yun Chujia's eyes fell on the record, but she thought in her heart that this record might not be fake because Lan Luchen's appearance was too similar to that of the mermaid big brother. Especially after he used a secret technique and turned his eyes blue, he was practically identical to the mermaid brother. Perhaps this was a phenomenon of atavism, but if that was the case, wasn't she also a descendant of the mermaid? Hei Xinjiu could not help but laugh self-deprecatingly. She did not even know what she was. The reincarnation of the ghost ancestor was most likely related to the demon ancestor, and now it was related to the mermaid. What was she exactly? A few days later, it was time for the spirit energy lesson. Lan Luoyen thought that Yun Chujo and Lan Luofang did not go to chop the undying wood, so she said a lot of harsh words. Furthermore, she took the initiative to report to Mr. Shi after he came in. Then, Yun Chujo and Lan Luoyen handed over the wooden token calmly. Lan Luoyen was harshly reprimanded by Mr. Shi and was punished to chop the undying wood. Lan Luofang almost burst out laughing. She now felt that following Yun Chujo, this good-for-nothing, was not bad. At the very least, she could make Lan Luoyen suffer without much effort. Lan Luoyen was naturally half dead from anger. For several days, she could not even pick up her chopsticks. She had even made up her mind to let Yun Chujo have a good look at the family competition. In the blink of an eye, the time for the family competition had arrived. Although it was only a small competition, the leaders of the Lan family's main, second, and third branches had all come. Their purpose was very clear. They wanted to see which branch's junior was more outstanding. The rules of the Lan family competition were different from other places. Participants could challenge anyone they wanted. However, in order to ensure fairness, each person could participate in the competition at most 2 times. After that, they wouldn't have the qualifications to challenge or be challenged. Lan Luoyen stared at Yun Chujo viciously. She had already thought it through. As long as the competition was announced, she would challenge Yun Chujo, this trash. Firstly, she could take revenge and secondly, she could give her eldest son face. However, she did not expect that Lan Luofang would propose a challenge to her as soon as the competition started. Although Lan Luoyen was a little surprised, she thought that it was not bad to take care of this trash Lan Luofang first. After all, she had not learned how to transform into a supplementary spiritual beast and was not her opponent at all. Immediately, the two of them walked to the venue of the competition. Without saying anything, they directly started fighting. Jia Shi looked at the competition on the field with concern. Although Lan Luofang and Lan Luoyan's spiritual power levels were both at the second level of the extreme spiritual realm, Lan Luoyan could already transform into a supplementary spiritual beast long ago. How could Fang Er be her match? Lan Dimeo's face was also a little solemn. In his heart, he was blaming Lan Luofang. Did he not know what level he was at? And he was the first one to go up. Wasn't he asking for humiliation? Only, Yun Chujo was leisurely munching on melon seeds. She had told Lan Luofang a brilliant plan. It was no problem for her to take care of that little bitch Lan Luoyen. Chapter 4762 was a complete victory. Lan Dimeo saw He Xinjiu munching on melon seeds and became even more furious. On such an important occasion, this little trash was munching on melon seeds. He was wondering why Lan Luofang suddenly became so random. It turned out that it was this little trash who abducted her. It seemed that he had to teach Jia Shi a lesson and let her restrain Lan Luofang so that she wouldn't be completely led astray by this little trash. He regained his senses and put his attention back to the competition field. Lan Luofang and Lan Luoyen only had a movement technique competition at the beginning and didn't release their spirit beasts. Lan Luofang was usually very hardworking in body refinement, so she had a slight advantage. Lan Luofang was secretly resentful and immediately released her spirit goshawk. Lan Luofang also released her natal spirit beast, a spirit tiger shark. The spiritual power goshawk and the spiritual power tiger shark immediately engaged in a battle. Although water countered fire, this was not suitable for a battle between spiritual power beasts. For a moment, the two spiritual power beasts were locked in a stalemate, unable to determine the winner. Lan Luoyen revealed a cold smile. She still had a trump card. After she formed a seal, a fire butterfly joined the battle. Although the fire butterfly's combat strength was not strong, because of its addition, the balance between the goshawk and tiger shark was instantly broken, and the tiger shark fell into a disadvantageous position. The worry on Jia Shi's face became even more intense, and she could not wait to end the competition immediately. However, she did not dare, and could only stare at the competition intently. Lan Luoyen looked at Lan Luofang with contempt. I advise you to surrender immediately, or else, HMPH. Lan Luofang bit her lips and did not say anything, but directly attacked Lan Luofang. Lan Luofang curled her lips. Although her movement technique was not as good as Lan Luofang's, it would not take long for her spiritual beast to win. She only needed to hold on for a while. However, what she did not expect was that after the two of them exchanged blows, Lan Luofang suddenly released a giant fish and pounced towards Lan Luoyen. Lan Luoyen cried out in surprise. She had no idea that Lan Luofang could already transform into a supporting spiritual beast, so she was caught off guard. It was already too late for her spiritual beast to come over and help. The giant fish opened its bloody mouth and bit Lan Luoyen's entire upper body in its mouth. Although it was only a spiritual beast, this time, it also caused Lan Luoyen to suffer a huge injury, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Lan Luofang kicked Lan Luoyen's abdomen, directly kicking her out of the competition ground. This round, Lan Luofang won completely. Lan Luofang saw the surprise and gratification on Jia Shi's face, and could not help but redden her eyes. She had finally done it. She could finally make her mother proud of her. She could finally rely on her own strength to defeat the people who bullied her. She looked gratefully at Yun Chujo, who was still munching on melon seeds. If she had not given her an idea to hide the fact that she could transform into a giant fish, she might not have been able to defeat Lan Luoyen so easily. The worry on Lan Dimeo's face instantly turned into complacency. He glanced at Lan Dimeo, who was from the Lan family's main branch, and said, "Big brother, I'm sorry. We won this round. Speaking of which, Luofang is the weakest among the three of us. It's really surprising that she won so easily." Lan Dimeo's face didn't look good. He said coldly, "Dimeo, there are winners and losers in this competition. It's just the beginning, so it's nothing. Also, I think the weakest among the three of you is that Yun Chujo, right? One person can participate in 2 matches. The 3 of you are already destined to lose 2 matches before you even start." Chapter 4763, Lan Dimeo. Who was almost angered to death. Lan Dimeo listened to Lan Diguang's words and then looked at Yun Chuzhou, who had changed from eating melon seeds to eating fruits. He instantly felt a little stifled. Not only did this little trash have low spiritual power, but her natal spiritual beast was also a Gowei Batsao. Anyone on the field could torture her to death. Sigh, for the jade token, he could only endure it. He could only hope that no one would challenge this little trash. At this moment, Lan Luofang's Lan Luofang proposed to challenge Lan Luofang. The reason was very simple. She wanted to help the big house regain face. Lan Luofang knew that she was not Lan Luofang's opponent. Therefore, after fighting with all her might for a moment, she took the initiative to admit defeat. Lan Dimeo could not help but be stunned when he saw the neither servile nor overbearing Lan Luofang. He remembered that Lan Luofang was not like this in the past. She was very strong-willed. How did she become so transparent now? His gaze could not help but fall on Yun Chuzhou, who was chewing on a fruit. Could it be that she was influenced by this little trash? In that case, it seemed that it was not a bad thing to let Lan Luofang follow this little trash. The next round of the competition had 3 winners and losers. After calculating the winner, it was actually a draw. There was one person from the big house, second house, and third house who had not participated in the competition. They all had 2 chances to challenge. Lan Luocheng, who was left from the main branch, and Lan Luamu, who was left from the third branch, were the best of their generation. As for the remaining person from the third branch, it was Yun Chuzhou. Lan Luocheng and Lan Luamu looked at each other. Both of them had a tacit understanding. The outcome of the competition between the two of them would directly determine the result of this competition. The reason was very simple. No matter who won or lost, they could easily defeat Yun Chuzhou. She was not in their consideration at all. Lan Dimeo sighed. It was over. The 3 of them would definitely be at the bottom this time. It was a pity that Luo Han had gone out to carry out the family mission. Otherwise, he could have competed with the 2 of them. When he thought of this, he looked at Yun Chuzhou with disdain. He saw that this fellow had stopped eating fruits and was eating pastries. He did not look like he was here to participate in the competition. Instead, he looked like he was here for an outing. Lan Dimeo glared at her fiercely, only to see He Xinzhou jumping towards him. Great uncle, why are you looking for me? Are you hungry too? Lan Dimeo was so angry that he almost died. If it were not for the fact that he could not lose his temper in front of everyone, he would have given Yun Chuzhou a get lost. He suppressed his anger and said, in a while, Luo Cheng and Luo Mu will definitely challenge you after the winner is decided. Just admit defeat so that you won't get hurt. Yun Chuzhou nodded obediently. Great uncle, I think so too. A good-for-nothing like me is no match for them. There's no need for me to rush to their side. Lan Dimeo felt a mouthful of blood rush to his throat. He didn't even want to look at her. He waved his hand and said, get lost. Get as far away as possible. After Yun Chuzhou left, Lan Deguang from the main branch and Lan Deshun from the second branch said a few sarcastic words. Lan Dimeo was so angry that his intestines were turning green with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have found an excuse to not let this little trash participate in the competition. At this moment, Lan Luocheng and Lan Luamu had already fought. In the end, Lan Luocheng from the main branch narrowly won. The people from the main branch immediately cheered. This time, the first place in the family competition would definitely belong to their main branch. Lan Luocheng was very proud. He pretended to say a few polite words to Lan Luamu. Then, he looked at Yun Chuzhou and said with disdain, Yun Chuzhou, quickly admit defeat. Don't waste time. Chapter 4764, Am I really such a good-for-nothing? Everyone present thought that Yun Chuzhou would happily admit defeat. Unexpectedly, she said with disdain, with just you. You want me to admit defeat? The people of our 3 branches would rather live while standing than die while sitting. No way. Lan Dimeo almost jumped up from his chair. Was this little girl crazy? Didn't she just say that she would surrender obediently? Why did she become so arrogant now? With her small arms and legs, and her useless Goei Batsao spiritual beast, she still wanted to fight with Lan Luocheng? Was she asking for a beating with tricks? Lan Luocheng was stunned at first, then sneered, Yun Chujiu, since you say such arrogant words, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Please. Wait a minute. Your spiritual power is so high, and you are older than me. Do you have the nerve to fight with me like this? Yun Chujiu curled her lips and said. Lan Luocheng sneered and said, then according to you, how should we compete? You are not allowed to use spiritual beasts, and you have to give me 3 moves. Of course, if you feel that you don't have the ability, you can directly reject me. After all, Lan Luocheng is not here right now, so there are people who are not as strong as the monkeys. Yun Chujiu said with slight disdain. Yun Chujiu's words clearly hit Lan Luocheng's sore spot. The person he feared the most and hated the most was Lan Luocheng, and he immediately snorted, I will agree to you. Even so, you can't last 10 moves in my hands. Make your move. Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes. Let's be honest. If I win, you can't go back on your word, and you can't say that I won unjustly. You volunteered for this. Of course. Hurry up and make your move. Don't waste time, Lan Luocheng said impatiently. In his eyes, Yun Chujiu was like an ant. He was at the 4th level of the Supreme Spirit Realm, while Yun Chujiu was only at the 6th level of the Nirvana Spirit Realm. There was no comparison at all. Therefore, even if he did not use the Spirit Beast, he was still confident that he could defeat Yun Chujiu within 10 moves if he allowed Yun Chujiu to use 3 moves. Everyone present thought the same way. Only Lan Luofang saw the smile on Yun Chujiu's face and felt that things were not that simple. Based on the lesson that she had learned through blood and tears, the moment that bad guy revealed that smile, it was basically a scam. Yun Chujiu put on an act and cupped her hands towards Lan Luocheng. Brother Luocheng, I'm going to make a move now. Be careful. Lan Luocheng curled his lips in disdain and did not say anything. However, he was still fully focused on watching Yun Chujiu's every move. Hey! Take this. Yun Chujiu said as she slammed her palm with spiritual power towards Lan Luocheng's front heart. Seeing that Lan Luocheng easily dodged her attack, Yun Chujiu was stunned. You dodged it so easily. Am I really that good for nothing? The crowd booed. Don't you know whether you're good for nothing or not? Yun Chujiu gritted her teeth and said, I don't believe that I can't hit you. Take this. Lan Luocheng thought that this guy had a trump card, but he realized that this attack was only slightly faster than the previous one. Even if he didn't dodge it, this attack wouldn't hurt him. At this point, Lan Luocheng's vigilance had mostly dissipated. At this moment, he only saw an afterimage, but he could feel a thick killing intent behind him. Chapter 4765 Yun Chujiu wins. Lan Luocheng was shocked and hurriedly jumped forward. Even so, he was still hit by Yun Chujiu's palm wind on his right shoulder. He immediately cried out in pain. Before Lan Luocheng could react, Yun Chujiu's palm wind had already attacked him again. Lan Luocheng couldn't care less about the pain on his right shoulder. He quickly jumped to the side and dodged Yun Chujiu's attack. Brother Luocheng, we agreed to give you 3 moves. Why did you give me 1 more move? You really have the demeanor of an elder brother. Yun Chujiu said with a smile. Lan Luocheng's face was very gloomy. He now knew that Yun Chujiu's first 2 moves were used to confuse him. The ultimate goal was to let the 3rd move succeed. He sneered, Yun Chujiu, even if your plot succeeds and hurts my right shoulder, I can easily defeat you. Take this. The 2 of them immediately engaged in a fight. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, the 2 of them actually ended in a draw. Everyone present was stunned. Yun Chujia's spiritual power was clearly much lower than Lan Lucheng's, yet she could actually end in a draw with him. This movement technique was too powerful, right? It was rare for Lan Dimeo to find Yun Chujio pleasing to the eye. This little trash at least had some redeeming qualities. However, no matter how fast her movement technique was, she would not be a match for Lan Luocheng in the long run. What a pity. At this moment, he heard Yun Chujio say smugly, "Brother Luocheng, you say that you, an expert at the 4th level of the extreme spiritual realm, actually fought me to a draw. Aren't you ashamed? TSK, I don't even know how you defeated Brother Luomu. It's probably dog shit, luck, right? With your level of trash, any one of the people present can defeat you. With you like this, where did you get the courage to give me 3 moves? Why aren't you using your spiritual beast? TSK, you're really shameless." Lan Luocheng was almost angered to death by this fellow. This stupid girl's words were too sarcastic. What did she mean by where did he get the courage? She was the one who forced him to give 3 moves, alright? She was really too shameless. Lan Luocheng wished that he could slap Yun Chujio away and end the competition. However, Yun Chujio was as slippery as a loach and he could not even touch the corner of her clothes. Just when Lan Luocheng was extremely anxious, he realized that Yun Chujio's move had a flaw. He was immediately delighted and did not think too much about it. He attacked that flaw. In fact, most of the onlookers could tell that it was a flaw that Yun Chujio had deliberately exposed in order to trick Lan Luocheng. However, Lan Luocheng was already dizzy from Yun Chujio's anger and was anxious to win, so he was tragically tricked. By the time he reacted, he had already been kicked out of the competition ground by Yun Chujio. Lan Luocheng's head was buzzing. He was a little confused. Who was he? Where was he? What was he doing? However, when he saw Yun Chujio smiling in the middle of the arena, he immediately became angry out of embarrassment. Yun Chujio, you, what about me? Brother Luocheng, the winner takes all. You've already lost. Don't embarrass yourself here. Yun Chujio said smugly. Lan Luocheng was so angry that he pointed at Yun Chujio while trembling. You! Yun Chujio interrupted him again. What do you want to say? That I'm a swindler. Don't you know that every war is full of swindlers? You lost to your own underestimation of the enemy and your own arrogance, and you still have the nerve to blame me? Shameless. Chapter 4766. Was she here to embroider flowers? Lan Luocheng was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He was so angry that he wanted to go up and find trouble with Yun Chujio, but he saw Yun Chujio run up to Lan Dimeo. "Uncle, Grandpa, please control Brother Luocheng. How can he beat someone up when he loses? You scared me." Lan Dimeo saw Lan Dimeo's stiff face and felt very comfortable in his heart. When he looked at Yun Chujio again, he felt that this bad guy was much more pleasing to the eye. Although he won by relying on bad water, it was good to win no matter what. Ha ha ha. Lan Deguang gritted his teeth and said to Yun Chujio, "Luocheng is just trying to scare you. Admit defeat. He won't do anything excessive. That's good. He really scared me to death. I thought Brother Luocheng was going to kill me." Yun Chujio patted her chest and said with a fearful expression. Although Lan Luocheng wanted to strangle Yun Chujio to death, when he heard Lan Deguang's words, he had no choice but to return to his seat with a gloomy face. Lan Luomu was the one who was the happiest at this moment. At first, he thought that their second branch would only be second, but now that Yun Chujio had defeated Lan Luocheng, his chance had come. As long as he defeated Yun Chujio, the third branch would be tied, and their second branch would not have to lower themselves by a head. Thinking of this, he said to Yun Chujio, who had already jumped back to the competition venue, "Yun Chujio, although you used extraordinary methods to defeat Brother Luocheng, I won't fall for your trick. Just admit defeat. TSK, it seems that you're even worse than Brother Luocheng." At least brother Luo Cheng has the guts to let me win, Yun Chujiu said with a pout. Lan Luomu smiled. Your goading method is useless against me. No matter what you say, I won't give in. But I can let you make the first move. Please. Lan Dimeo shook his head when he saw this. This unorthodox method could only be used once. Let's see, Lan Luomu was no longer fooled. This round, the little trash was bound to lose. However, he was still quite satisfied in his heart. Even if he lost, the 3 branches would still be tied. This result was still acceptable. Seeing that it was useless to provoke him, Yun Chujiu did not waste any time and immediately attacked Lan Luomu. Lan Luomu learned from Lan Lucheng's lesson and directly released his spirit wolf. The spirit wolf not only blocked Yun Chujiu's palm wind, but also struck at Yun Chujiu with its claws. Yun Chujiu hurriedly dodged to the side. Lan Luma's palm wind had arrived again. She hurriedly dodged again, but the spirit wolf's bloody mouth was waiting for her at the side. For a moment, Yun Chujiu was forced into a fluster and was in a sorry state. Lan Dimeo's brows were tightly knitted. From the looks of it, at most a few more breaths, that little trash would definitely lose. These people were obviously making sarcastic remarks. Everyone knew that even if Yun Chujiu released her Goei Batsao, it would be useless. Moreover, releasing a spiritual beast would consume a lot of spiritual power. It would be better not to release a useless spiritual beast like that. Yun Chujiu's eyes darkened. Although the Goei Batsao was useless, she still had a small purple needle. Thinking of this, she raised her hand and several small purple needles shot towards Lan Luomu and the spiritual wolf respectively. Whether it was Lan Luomu on the field or the audience watching the battle, they were all dumbfounded when they saw the small purple needles that Yun Chujiu had conjured. What was this thing? Was it a low-level spiritual power materialization spell? Even if it was a low-level spiritual power materialization spell, shouldn't it also conjure swords? Why was this Yun Chujiu conjuring embroidery needles? Did she come to embroider? Chapter 4767, Immortal Lu Bone Repairing Ointment. Lan Luomu was stunned for a moment before a trace of disdain appeared on the corner of his mouth. This Yun Chujiu was probably at her wit's end, so she could only release these useless embroidery needles. He waved his hands and easily caught more than 10 small purple needles. The spiritual power giant wolf also used its claws to catch the small purple needles that were shot at it, revealing an expression of disdain similar to Lan Lumas. Yun Chujiu, you don't have to use such a small trick to embarrass yourself. I'll return these needles to you right now. Boom. 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 Lan Lumas' words were interrupted by several explosions, followed by Lan Lumas' miserable screams. Even though Yun Chujiu's spiritual power was much weaker than his, and even though the power of the small purple needles was limited, he still had more than 10 small purple needles in his hands. Such a series of explosions was enough to make him suffer. Lan Luma's hands were badly mutilated from the explosions. Some of his fingers were even broken, and he let out a shrill cry. The claws of the giant silver wolf were also destroyed. As Lan Luomu cut off the supply of spiritual power, it could only disintegrate unwillingly. Second Elder Lan Deshun's expression changed drastically. This broken finger was much more serious than spitting out blood. If he delayed any longer, Lan Luma's hand would be crippled. Immediately, he rushed to Lan Luomu and asked someone to reattach the severed finger. Then, he applied a black ointment on the wound. He Xinjiu moved to the side and was surprised to find that not only was the severed finger reattached in an instant, even the severed finger was regrowing flesh at a speed visible to the naked eye. This fellow's eyes lit up when he saw the ointment in Second Elder's hand. This ointment was too magical. The strange grass in her dantian shook its leaves in disdain. What was so magical about this? As long as there was enough medicine, it could grow back even if her leg was broken. Of course, He Xinjiu did not know what the Guai Chao was thinking. The guy secretly squeezed in front of the Second Elder, wanting to see what the black ointment was. Lan Luomu, who was slightly better, saw He Xinjiu at first glance. He immediately gritted his teeth and said, Yun Chujiu, good, very good. Just you wait. Yun Chujiu stared at the bottle of black ointment and said lightly, I didn't ask you to take it with your hands. How can you blame me for your carelessness? Besides, haven't your fingers already grown back? You should thank me instead of the old ones. As he said that, he touched Lan Luma's hand, which made Lan Luomu scream in pain. Bitch! You're courting death. Lan Luomu said with bloodshot eyes. The second elder beside him quickly said, calm down. If your emotions fluctuate too much, it will affect the efficacy of the immortal Lu bone healing ointment. The second elder looked at Yun Chujiu coldly. His eyes were full of warning and threats. Yun Chujiu pouted and slipped away. This guy was happy in his heart. She didn't touch Lan Luomu just now because she wanted to dip some immortal Du bone strengthening ointment in it. This guy fed the ointment to Guai Chao and asked it to quickly research the formula. Although her abnormal physique probably didn't need this ointment, it might be of great use in the future. Other things aside, looking at the second elder's precious appearance, this immortal Du bone augmentation ointment was definitely worth a lot, and it was very rare. If she could learn how to concoct it, she would have a golden path. Chapter 4768. Strive to not be so useless in the future. Just as He Xinjiu was thinking happily, she heard Lan Dimeo say in a never-before-heard kind tone, Little Jiu, come here. Yun Chujiu hopped to the front of Lan Dimeo and said with a smile, Uncle, Grandpa, I didn't embarrass you, did I? Lan Dimeo could not stop smiling. Not only did he not embarrass himself, he was too proud. Although he knew that Yun Chujiu didn't rely on her true ability to win, and she was always going the other way, the process wasn't important, but the result was. Although the competition didn't involve the distribution of benefits, looking at the depressed faces of Lan Deguang and Lan Deshun, it was really refreshing. In the past, when Lan Luochen was around, the big house was the only one that stood out. They could only compete with the second house for second place. This time, they actually won first place for the first time. It was really something to celebrate. Lan Dimeo nodded his head in praise towards Yun Chujiu. Little Jiu, you did very well, but you can't be arrogant. You have to keep up the good work, understand? Great uncle, I understand. I will definitely study hard and strive to not be such a waste in the future, He Xinjiu said obediently. When everyone heard this fellow's words, the corners of their eyes twitched. Initially, when she said that she was a waste, they thought that she knew her own limits. However, when they heard her say this now, they felt that she was mocking them. If she was trash, then wouldn't the defeated Lan Luocheng and Lan Luomu be even more trash? However, from the bottom of their hearts, they still did not take a liking to Yun Chujiu. They felt that she was just lucky. There would not be such a good thing next time. First elder Lan Dimeo really could not stand Lan Dimeo's flamboyant manner. He snorted coldly and said, Third brother, this is just a small competition. The main event is the half-year competition in a month's time. When that time comes, we won't be able to win by relying on some petty tricks. Lan Dimeo smiled and said, Big brother, what you said makes sense. However, this time, Luo Han couldn't make it to the small competition because he was on a family mission, but he could make it to the big competition. However, I heard that Luo Chen has been locked up for half a year by you. I'm afraid he won't be able to make it to the big competition. Big brother won't let Luo Chen out just to win, right? The expression of the first elder became even uglier. He originally intended to release Lan Luochen to participate in the grand competition in advance, but after being ridiculed by Lan Dimeo, he could only say against his heart, of course not. Even if Luochen doesn't participate, our great house can still win. Then we'll wait and see when the time comes. Lan Dimeo said with a fake smile. He Xinjiu found Lan Dimeo very pleasing to the eye at this time. He was really her great uncle. While He Xinjiu was thinking, she felt a few hostile gazes. She turned her head and saw Lan Luocheng, Lan Luomu, and some other people looking at her coldly. Yun Chujiu curled her lips indifferently. Her current goal was to cling tightly to Lan Dimeo's thigh. As for these little dregs, they were her stepping stones. After returning to the third room, Lan Luofang said to Yun Chujiu worriedly, "Why do you have to compete with them? Can't you just admit defeat? They hate you now. When the competition comes, they will definitely think of a way to kill you. You should know that during the competition, no one will care even if you are dead." Yun Chujiu bared her little white teeth at Lan Luofang. "What are you afraid of? Don't I still have Goei Batsao?" Chapter 4769, touching Guai Chao. Lan Luofang said exasperatedly, "Forget it. What use is that lousy grass of yours? It's not as useful as the fire butterfly that Lan Luofang transformed into." "Who said that? My Goei Batsao is amazing. I even specially wrote a song for it." Yun Chujiu said with a smile. "Wrote a song? What song?" Lan Luofang asked suspiciously. Yun Chujiu cleared her throat and began to howl, "There's no fragrance of flowers, no tree height. I'm a grass that no one knows. I'm never lonely, never troubled. Look, my companions are all over the world." Lan Luofang's face was stiff. Was this guy bored? He actually wrote a song for her lousy Goei Batsao. After Yun Chujiu finished singing, Lan Luofang asked suspiciously, "Did you really write this song?" He Xinjiu would never admit that she was just a song porter. She said shamelessly, "Yes, am I very talented? Do you admire me very much?" Lan Luofang curled her lips. "Alright, don't talk about these useless things. In short, you better be prepared. Otherwise, you won't even know how you die. Oh right, don't worry about your talismans and chili noodles. These things are not allowed to be used." Lan Luofang's words were like a bucket of cold water that instantly drenched He Xinjia's heart. This time, she deliberately did not use the talismans and chili noodles to save them for the grand competition. She actually did not allow them to be used. Lan Luofang saw her half-dead appearance and sighed. "So, I advise you to use this period of time to train hard to transform into a supplementary spiritual beast. Otherwise, your little life will definitely be lost." Lan Luofang was not worried about her own life. Because with the protection of Jia Shi, even Lan Luoyen would not dare to kill her. He Xinjia's heart was filled with bitterness. She wanted to transform into other spiritual beasts, but she could not do so except for Goei Batsao. She missed De Hua so much now. It was all the fault of Go Wei Ba. What He Xinjiu did not know was that ever since the Guai Chao in her dantian heard He Xinjiu sing Guai Chao, the entire plant had fallen into a state of bewilderment. No fragrance of flowers. No tree height. I'm a grass that no one knows about. Woo woo, what you said was too damn right. Since she treated me so well, I should return the favor. Is it a competition? When the time comes, I'll let those idiots see how powerful Go Wei Ba dog tail is. Yun Chujiu didn't know what Guai Chao was thinking. After returning to the courtyard, she cupped her chin and thought about how to deal with the competition. She couldn't use talismans or poison, and she couldn't reveal her foolishness either. What other trump cards did she have then? It was a pity that ever since she left the Nameless Sword sect, those drifters hadn't come out from between her brows. It was probably because this place wasn't suitable for them to survive. Otherwise, she could have used the drifters to plot against those dregs. Thinking of the drifters, Yun Chujia's eyes lit up. Although her spiritual beasts were useless, she could make up for it with her swordsmanship. This was the saying, "The east is not bright, the west is bright." Thinking of this, Yun Chujiu immediately took out an immortal sword from her storage ring and brought it into the courtyard. Although this immortal sword of the Chongshao continent was considered precious, it would not attract the attention of others. That was why this fellow dared to bring it out openly. Hong Ling and the other two were working in the courtyard. When they saw Yun Chujo coming out with a sword in her hand aggressively, they were so scared that they immediately knelt on the ground. Could it be that this ancestor was going to kill again? Chapter 47-70, from lowly 1 to 49. Yun Chujo looked at the three people kneeling on the ground in confusion. To be honest, she just wanted to practice her swordsmanship. Was there a need to be so scared? However, her heart moved and she shouted sternly, "I can't tell anyone about my every move in the courtyard. If I find out that someone is cheating, I'll kill her. Do you hear me?" Hong Ling and the other two did not dare to say no. They nodded their heads in fear. "All of you, get up. Don't worry. As long as you are obedient, such a kind and good master like me will not mistreat you," Yun Chujo said with a smile. Hong Ling and the other two felt as if they were barking dogs. It would be a ghost if they believed you. If you are capable, don't cut the stone bench into two when you say it. Yun Chujo continued, "Lu Luo and Kai Yun, go outside and keep an eye out for me. Hong Ling, prepare some tea and pastries for me. I want to practice my swordsmanship." Lu Luo did not have any thoughts about Hong Ling gaining Yun Chuji's trust. She was not as brave as Hong Ling compared to following her ancestor out in fear. It was better to stay in the courtyard. After Lu Luo and Kai Yun left, Yun Chujo narrowed her eyes as she looked at the immortal swords in her hands. These immortal swords were all shamelessly tricked back by her. Back then, she said that she would let them go free after leaving the ancient sword tomb. However, the continent had changed several times, and these immortal swords could not escape from He Xinjia's hands. These immortal swords had also accepted their fate. So what if they did not accept their fate? They couldn't just run away on their own. Yun Chujo counted and found that there were a total of 77 to 49 immortal swords left in her storage ring. Most of them didn't even have the chance to show their faces. What a waste of heaven's gifts. Yun Chujo felt that she had to compensate them, so she decided to give them a good name. When the immortal swords heard that Yun Chujo was going to give them names, they all shivered. With this guy's naming skill, it must be a tragedy in the human world. What Xiao He, Xiao Hong, De Hua, but face, oh God, could they refuse? Yun Chujo rubbed her chin and thought for a while, then said excitedly, "From now on, you guys will be little bitch number 1, little bitch number 2, little bitch number 3, little bitch number 1 to little bitch number 4." 9 only had one thought at this time, beg for quick death. The majestic immortal sword was finally called Little Slut by others. Just how despicable were they? She was naturally practicing half a set of sword techniques that she had learned on the stone wall. Although it was only half a set, she felt that if she used it properly, she should be able to achieve a surprise victory at the crucial moment. Unfortunately, other than the chaotic sword intent, the fast sword intent, and the slow sword intent, she had yet to comprehend the fourth sword intent. Otherwise, her chances would be higher. After preparing the pastries and tea, Hong Ling stared blankly at Yun Chujo, who was already surrounded by the sword light. Her swordsmanship could actually be this magical. Hong Ling couldn't be blamed for making a fuss. It was mainly because in the Chongshao continent, cultivators looked down on this kind of cultivation method, which relied on external forces. Therefore, even if someone used a sword, their level was very ordinary. Moreover, Yun Chujo used a sword technique that had long been lost on the stone wall, which was so mysterious that it surprised Hong Ling. After Yun Chujo practiced the sword technique once, she said to Hong Ling, "Come, use your full strength to attack me. If you're just going to brush me off, HMPH." Hong Ling did not dare to disobey and could only release her spiritual fire crane. The fiery red fire crane pounced fiercely at Yun Chujo. Hong Ling was on tenterhooks. If her spiritual fire crane injured her, this ancestor would not punish her in anger, right? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.